Hi again. Here I'd like to continue the discussion of JavaScript and the magnifier. In the last video we set up our image here, and we've got it on the screen there. So now why don't we set up the styles for the magnifier, okay? So I've got a div here called image large, and this is going to be our magnifier. So what we're going to do is we're going to say image large. And what I need to do is I need to give it a height and width that will be the size of the magnifier, okay? So why don't we give it a width of 100 pixels and a height of 100 pixels, okay? And then just so we can see it, you could put a border on it. Yeah, why don't we give it a border of 1 pixel solid, and then I'll make it... I'm going to make it white for now, okay? So we won't see it against the white background yet, but when it's against the image, we'll see the white square, okay? I'm also going to give this a box shadow property, okay? And so with box shadow, there's a few parameters that you set. The first one is the offset on the X. I'll make it 0. And then the offset on the Y, I'll set that to 0, so the shadow will be centered on the box. And then we set the spread for the shadow. So I'm going to say 5 pixels. And then we'll set the color, and I'll make the color black. Okay? So let's save that and take a look, right? So I'll go to my page here, and you can see that this is my box now down at the bottom here. So what's happening is I've got one div here, and then the second div here, and they both stack up. Well, I mean, that's what happens normally, right? Like one box is like a block, and then the next block goes underneath it, right? So that's exactly what should happen. But really what I want is I want this one to be on top of the other one, okay? So what I'll do is I'll go in here, and I'm going to use absolute position. So for image large, I'm going to set the position to absolute. Okay, and when I set absolute position, I can set the left, top, right, and bottom. It's easier for me to position the box by its upper left corner. It's just, we'll just use that as kind of our standard reference. So it'll be left and top for us. So I'll set the left to 0 and the top to 0. Okay, and so now when I view, you'll see that there is my box, right? Now the thing is, the upper left corner here is relative to the browser. It's not relative to this, this image block here, right? And we can prove that if I move the image, like if I go to image small here and I set it to margin auto, right? That'll make the margins on the left and right equal, which will put the box in the middle. It'll put this image small in the middle of the page, right? So when I do that, you can see that this moves to the middle of the page, but the magnifying block here just stays in the upper left corner, right? So what I'd like is I'd like to sync this up so that the upper left corner of this, right, matches the upper left corner here, right? And in CSS, we can do that using the position relative, right? Now, to make this work, since I put these two divs, these are siblings, right? What I want to do is I want to make the container, their ancestor or parent object, I want to make this position relative. And so any position absolute elements inside a relative position element will use the relative element as in their coordinate space. So in other words, the upper left corner of container, if it's relative, will become the reference point for this absolute position that's a child object, right? Okay, so let's add a style to container and say you are going to have a width. You know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy these two things here and make it the same width and height as the image, okay? And then what I'm going to do, and for some reason I always feel I have to put the position property at the top here. So I'm going to say position relative. Oops, relative, like that, right? So I've got container as position relative, and then this image large, which is inside the container, is position absolute. So now with this setup, container is going to be our reference point. Okay. You know what I should do too is I'm going to move this margin auto off the image small, and let's move it up to container and use container as our positioning element, right? Because like it'll take all these guys with it, right? So we'll set this up like this, and then we'll refresh it here, and now you'll see that the image or the image large right here, this small box or the magnifier block, right, is 0 left and 0 top, and it matches like the edges of its container, right? So that's the effect of absolute position. And then if we were to move this image large, like change the left and top properties, then that box here would move inside, right? And so we're going to use that when we drag it, right? So when we click on this and drag, we'll be setting the left and top properties so we can kind of move this guy around in here. And for testing, we can go into the inspector here and we can test it out, right? So you can see if I go in here and I look at container and I turn off the relative property, you can see that this box moves to the upper corner here, and it's essentially now it's relative to the body tag. But if container is relative position, then the box is relative to the container, right? And then if I look at image large here and I look at the left and top properties, I can go in here and you can see as I increase the left, you can see the box moves over, and as I increase the top property, the box moves down, right? And so now what we want to do is we want to put a large version of this image, or the full-sized version of this image, inside the box, and then our magnifier will be in business, okay? So anyway, thanks for watching, and in the next video we'll set up our JavaScript, okay?